there it lies in the sunlight, sloping up from the little lake that spreads out at the foot of the hillside on which the town is built. In the book, the town's called Mariposa, but everyone knows it's Orillia. So let me and Mr. Leacock show you around. I bet we can do a better job than some.
This building stands as an important example of the early 20th century industrial history and architecture.
So, this is the Gremlin tour of town center Orillia, and I suggest we start it nose in a book. Not because that's how I walk, I stopped since I badly twisted an ankle, but because the book, Sunshine Sketches from a Little Town by Stephen Leacock, whose day job was a professor at McGill University in Montreal but who holidayed here for decades in the summer, catches Orillia at the beginning of the 20th century, the golden age of small-town Ontario. The town itself loves the image, and most of the places in the stories are still standing, so what better way to see it? Add to it the city's own guided heritage walk, which you can download or pick up in hard copy, including on summer weekends on the pedestrian-only main street, and you got yourself a winning combination. Even if walking with your nose in a book and in a pamphlet at the same time practically guarantees an injury. It will be worth it, I promise. So, here we go. The street we've been walking for the past few minutes is Mississauga Street, Missinaba or Main Street in the book, which is, indeed, the main street, if not the oldest, but we'll get back to that. There is no doubt about its width. It is so wide that if you were to roll Jeff Thorpe's barber shop over on its face, it wouldn't reach half across. Well, I like to imagine that barber shop here, although that's always been a jeweller's and far too ornate for a barber, because it's 2 doors down from the Keene block, not just one of the oldest houses here, but because this was the telephone exchange where Jeff's daughter, Myra of the golden hair and Greek face, used to work. The shop is actually famous for having been owned by one William Frost, who, as the mayor of Orillia in 1911, pioneered daylight savings time in Canada. Yes, folks, daylight bill, this madness is his fault. Seeing as it only lasted 2 weeks, I'm not sure how we're still stuck with it. Frost's son was later the Premier of Ontario too. Anyway, back to Sunshine Sketches. Next door to the Keene block, the McCarthy block of Sunshine Sketches, is the Gribben building. Very pretty and sounding a lot like Glover's hardware store, except that had the Oddfellows Hall above it, and there wasn't one in Gribben. There was one upstairs in Keene block. So maybe Gribben is the McCarthy's. Or this on the corner of Petrie Street. I couldn't find much about it, except that it used to be a gentleman's department store. Don't know. Let's walk on. This side of the street is somehow more stylish than this one. It might be because this side of the town burned down in 1873. I'm sure it didn't feel like a good thing at the time, but as a result... Anyway, never you mind, because just up the street is the Aurelian Ground Zero, where all the points of compass meet, the one building that will attract your eye, even if you're not into old buildings. The Opera House, Mariposa House, which it was, and everything else besides. As Orillia became an incorporated village in 1867, the year of the Canadian Confederation, well, a village hall was called for, and the farmers' market, open air so far, wanted a roof over its head, this being Canada and customers preferring their carrots and potatoes without snow on them. The first building, a combination of a village hall, lock-up, courthouse and a market hall, went up in the early 1870s, but after the village became a town in 1875, well, something grander was called for. And this was it. Opened in 1895, it featured everything the town fathers needed to operate, plus an auditorium for 700 people with a real opera wrap-around balcony as if in London or Paris. It cost the taxpayer $25,000 at the time when 20 a month was a good salary, and I mean 20, not 20,000. And get this, just as the last installment of that mortgage was repaid in 1915, the whole thing burned down. They rebuilt it, but with the war and all that, cuts had to be made. So that wraparound balcony is no more, and neither is the tallest, prettiest tower. But essentially, it's still here, the city's pride and joy. Although the city has actually moved out in 1997. Where to? You'll see in a minute. The farmers' market moved too, to this new building that mainly contains the public library, opened in 2013, that, according to its architects, dramatically enhances downtown Orillia. Well, that may be so, only there's only so much drama in an essentially prefab glass cube. But did they really have to demolish the old Carnegie Library? It could have been incorporated into the new structure. It can be done. It has. I'll show you in a few weeks. Well, at least the garden's nice. And they've got dragon and stuff. I do like me a good dragon. Some of the houses opposite, especially the one with the restaurant here, feel like Smith's Hotel. We didn't go in, so I can't tell you if there is a portrait of King Edward, the son of King Albert and Queen Victorina on the wall. But there could be a cafe in the back. I guess it was closer to the lake and the railway station. Like here. Anyways, west of the library, Mississauga Street becomes residential, and there's better residential here, and I'll show you in a minute. So let's now take a look at the cross street, which in real life is Peachy Street. Kind of like Wood last year in miniature. That one's somewhere on the channel. First, there is the old post office. I meant to come back to it and then must have forgotten, but I assure you it's still there. It's now the Art and History Museum. I obviously like these faces that now adorn the entrance. Next, there is this, Orillia City Centre, the former Tudhope factory. The one well-preserved souvenir of Orillia's booming industrial past. It's also where the workers rebelled against the daylight savings. Tudhope made carriages and farm machinery, and for 5 years from 1908, cars. Only a couple of thousand were ever made, and only 11 are known to survive, but some drove well into the 1960s, all Canadian-made. Did I mention they went bankrupt? The company changed over to military production during the wars and to home appliances before fading away sometime in the 60s. But the building survived as the City Hall, University and apartments. Way to go! Not like Buffalo and the Larkin Administration Building. So, after this injection of positivity, let's go back to the main junction, which, apart from the opera, is the Sunshine Town's banking corners. The commercial is still here, so this must be the exchange, where the manager barely had time to go out for a drink all morning. This was a Sunday, so we couldn't check if the teller is still Mr. Pupkin. And even though it's a much later bank building, this could well be the original office of the Mariposa Packet, aka Orillia Packet and Times, defunct in 2017, somewhere way out that way, but it was somewhere around here in Sunshine Town Times. Other features of the Sunshine Town include the fire hall, now apartments, and the YMCA, now affordable housing. This was the first indoor swimming pool north of Toronto. Wonder if they kept that. Looks as if they did. Here is St. James Anglican, Reverend Drone's Church, where we hit upon a mystery. Because the church is here, even though it burned down in the book for insurance purposes, so is the little cemetery out the front, after the rest of it has been transferred to the new necropolis on the brow of the hill, and the maple trees and the lawn, but there is no rectory. In the city's own walking tour guide, it's listed under the same address as the church, even though it's shown in a completely different spot on the map. And we went to that spot on the map, and it wasn't there, or looked nothing like the picture. And then we came back and went all the way around the church, and again, nothing like the picture. So there's a riddle worthy of a sequel. Now if you continue up Peachy Street, the next few blocks are beautiful. And if I had fans who'd watch me for 7 or 8 hours at a time, I could probably dig up some information on most of these buildings. But since I don't, I haven't. So let's just take a walk. And as it's getting dark, now is the time for you to know that Orillia was the first town in North America to own a power plant. There was a small wood fire plant in Victoria Park, here, also home to one of the springs used for drinking water, now boarded up. That was before the municipal waterworks and the pumping and filtering station on the lake. But that first proper plant that commenced operation in 1902 was at Rugged Rapids on the River Severn, 19 miles out of the city. It wasn't very big. As per the sunshine sketches, by the time that the current dripped down to town, the light in the shop windows was just as dim as the oil lamps, but a bigger one soon followed. By the 1920s, Orillia could power itself at extremely cheap rates, which drove all these industries here. Blackout? What's a blackout? Until 1950s, when the province-owned Ontario Power Generation took over. Anyway, the 1930s plant, the Minden Station, wonderfully Art Deco, still stands. And I was planning a detour on our way up north. Alas, due to an accident we had to hottail it to Sudbury. So, maybe next time. And this is Judge Pepperle's house. Who says so? I do. But as it's now a funeral parlor, it's probably a sign to say goodbye to Stephen Leacock and his book and do some real history. This is the Coldwater Road, the origin of the city of Orillia, although that's to jump with gay abandon a few thousand years, but don't worry, we'll get back to this when we're on the lake. Purchased by the colonial government from the indigenous Ojibwe in 1795, for the next 20 years this was mainly a military transportation road, shortening the Lake Ontario to Lake Huron portage via the River Humber, Lake Simcoe and River Severn by the River Severn third of it. Cause what's alright for a canoe isn't always okay for a cannon. Digression alert. All three were named by Lieutenant Governor John Simcoe, including Lake Simcoe for his father, so not, as commonly thought, for himself. Anyway, Coldwater Road was a corduroy road, which means logs. A great deal of logs, you don't think. Big plus in the local marshes. But it's not a comfortable ride, and your horses will break a leg or two, and your carts will break some axles. Also, wood rots, so it's a lot of maintenance. It was worth it while Lake Huron was a war zone. But then, after in 1814 the Americans lost the war and won a peace conference, and the world's longest undefended border began to form, well, it became rather a drain on the resources. Just like the annual gifts paid to the native allies. It is at this point, around 1820, that several interesting men enter this story. Lieutenant Governor Colborne, Chiefs Yellowhead and Azans, but first of all, Lieutenant Governor Peregrine Maitland, who obviously cherished the memories of his service under the not yet Duke of Wellington in the Iberian Peninsula in the Napoleonic Wars, because he gave all these places their Spanish names. Orillia, the shores, Barilla, Oro, Amigos. Anyway, you can read more about it on the blog, link in the description. Long and frustrating story short, by 1829 the local Ojibwe have ceded their traditional lands and were settled by the government along the Coldwater Tract. Not only did everything go wrong with that project, drunk builders, drunk Ojibwe, missionaries of various Christian creeds fighting for converts, but also, a mere 6 years later, they were asked to pick themselves up and go further north, to today's Bruce Peninsula and Manitoulin Island, in the words of a British contemporary, wonderfully suited to them and unfit for any civilized purpose. We will get to Manitoulin on this trip, so I'll show you later. Anyway, the Ojibwes were to get money, but never so much of it. Until in 2016, in an out-of-court settlement, the government agreed to pay them $1 million. That's 1 billion for you North Americans. Canadian, but all the same, it's a record, although it may soon fall. We'll get back to this when in Sudbury in one of the next episodes. Anyways, with the Ojibwe now gone, some up north and some to the reserve in Rama across Lake Couchiching, where they remain to this day, in 1844 the original 310 plots in Orillia were sold, and so the city began. Another digression alert. In Oromedonte, just a few kilometers up the road, there's the African church. Maybe not impressive, but the sole reminder of the community of black United Empire loyalists who ended up here around that time in 1840s. Right, end of digression. At first, Orillia ran on whiskey, logging and farming, but not for long. The first railway from Toronto reached it in 1869, bringing with it not just the business, but also the better sort of summer holiday maker, the sort that would build a villa, bring 10 servants for the whole summer, buy clothes and sports equipment and go to shows. In 1873, there was a licensed bar for every 100 people in Orillia, including babies in arms and bedridden seniors. So, with the expansion of railways and then the independent municipal power, the town boomed. Lumber mills, sawmills, flour mills, planing mills, grist mills. Andrew Tate, Orillia's first millionaire, which meant a lot more back then, was in the lumber trade. To say nothing of Tudhope and his carriage works. Doctors, lawyers, schoolmasters and the rest followed. There were hotels and pleasure boats, like the Mariposa Belle from Sunshine Sketches. Oh wait, it's still here! Shows at the auditorium, 8,000 books in the library, 1,500 telephone numbers. even a large branch of the provincial asylum. Something for the next trip. But wait, we're on the lake. This is Couchiching Beach Park, where you can admire the pavilion and the bandstand, both from the Sunshine Town. Also where the smelly horse and cattle market used to be. And also where, for 92 years, but not anymore, you could have admired the monument to Samuel Champlain, which gets us back to 1615. Ooh, now I'm comfortable. My man Samuel came to visit these parts then, which the good people of Orillia commemorated in 1925 by showing him looking out to the lake, which is eastwards, i.e. where he'd just come from, not to some unknown horizons, but never mind. In 17th century court dress, which he was extremely unlikely to have worn on his explorations. Anyway, it was taken down in 2017 for cleaning and repairs and is not set to come back as of now. Offends modern sensibilities, they say. Well, so does the Coliseum, and nobody's talking of razing that to the ground. Maybe I'm just insensitive. Moving on. The one place that Champlain did visit in Orillia is here, the Narrows, the oldest preserved trace of human activity in the area. Around 3,000 to 5,000 years old. What is it? Well, from what it looks like now, it's really hard to tell, but it's fishing weirs. That's fishnets on stakes. In use since times immemorial until, well, recently. It's also a native holy site with the holy stone right here in that pink pavement. Some lofty plans of meandering pedestrian bridge float on the internet, but as of summer 2023, it is sad. Just like the history of Orillia from 1960s onward. The railway died. The station is now the Royal Canadian Legion, where for the modest price of annual membership you can eat, drink and play at a discount. The rise of suburbia and the commuters era drew away people and businesses towards Toronto. Orillia fell back on tourism and reinvented itself as the place for arts. There is the opera, several art galleries in town, the Mariposa Folk Festival, the longest running music festival in Canada. Gordon Lightfoot, best known in the 1970s and 80s, but dead only last May at the age of 85, was a devoted son of the city. All these guitars in the street and this memorial are for him. His is a sort of whiskey on top of a bottle of poured by the campfire sort of music. So, I suppose, in the right setting. And what do I know about Canadian music anyway? Even the tragically hip tragically bore me. The bare-naked ladies, on the other hand. Anyway, Couchiching Beach Park. If you're here these days, it's for a holiday or a weekend away. There's this really nice little beach with very good facilities and a brand new children's playground. And plenty of space for a picnic. So, enjoy, relax. As Leacock puts it, you're on Mariposa time now. And no, we didn't make it to his house. Oh well, next time. Gremlin on the road. 25.
I said that.
This home to some very large pigeons.
On the half, and so we're lucky.
You're 3/4 lucky altogether.
Lovely day for a Guinness. Yeah. Always a lovely day for a Guinness. It's not, it's horrible.